Hello, everybody. You probably had time to read this slide, Smart Data Prep with Prep, so if you're in the wrong room, this is the time to make the change. I'm Afton, this is Deepti, and before we get started, I have a couple of quick questions. You guys just shout out the answers if you know it. Can you just give me the names of every city in the world? Oh, yeah, right? How about every postal code? Or every country? Every once in a while I get a take-around country. So the problem that we have is that we have a list of values that are good, and then we have the values that we actually have to work with. And that's the kind of problem that I want to talk about today, that Deepti and I want to talk about today. First, a little bit about who we are. I'm Afton Lewis. I'm a software developer at Tableau. I've been here for 4 years, and I work on Tableau Prep. I have 3 amazing girls, and they all love Minecraft, and they bought me that for Father's Day. It's not because I like Minecraft, I want to be clear. And I only engage in ridiculous hobbies, so I'm an avid juggler, but not actually a very good one.
And I'm Deepti. I'm a software engineer along with Afton on Tableau Prep. I live in east side of Seattle with my 3 little boys. They're super passionate about Little Leagues, and believe me, I am too. It's just that I keep cheering at wrong places, you know? Side boundaries, no ball, I'm like, yay, 4 runs!
I don't know enough about Little League or cricket to get that joke, but okay. I like to talk about talking, so this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to start with a whirlwind tour of prep. It's going to be pretty quick. We'll talk about Smart Data Prep because if you didn't want to talk about Smart Data Prep, this is the wrong talk. We're going to talk about data roles, which is one of the ways that we're making Tableau Prep smarter. We'll talk about which data roles we provide out of the box right now. Deepti is going to talk to us about smart recommendations, which are way better than the other kind. And custom data roles, is that really a thing? Can we talk about that? And finally, we've got a block of time at the end for questions from you. So if you do have questions, fear not. We will actually have time for that. Okay. The whirlwind tour of prep as promised. All right. So in the center of the screen, you'll see that there's a selected step. I can't zoom because that's just a thing I can't do. But in the center of that step, what we've done is all of the UI now centers around that point. So let's talk up about this top right-hand corner. So this is the data pane. This is where you connect to your files and your database. This is be familiar if you're already familiar with Tableau Desktop. Up here at the top, the aforementioned flow pane. So the flow pane is where we have the high-level overview of all of your data prep actions. So this really gives you a sense of all of the major actions that you've taken. In the center, this is where we'll be spending the majority of our time in this talk. This is the profile pane, and for the node that you've selected, this is the current table. And what we're showing you here is not a tabular view, but rather profile information about each of your columns. In particular, we show these as a histogram right now. There we go. Down at the bottom is the familiar data grid, the data pane. This is where we are showing you the rows of your data. Really useful for sort of getting a sense of the grain of your data and maybe eyeballing some co-occurrence relations. Last but not least, we have the, I'll get this, it's the changes pane. And the changes pane, if the flow pane is the high-level detail, high-level overview, the changes pane is the low-level detail. So this is where we have all of the specific actions that you've taken at this step in the flow. And here you see we've removed a field, we've created a calculated field, we've changed a data type. And so at this is where you would do a bunch of operations on the changes that you've already made. So you can delete changes or reorder changes or edit them. And that's it. That is the whirlwind tour. So come by the data kiosk to see more if you want to. All right, let's talk about cleaning data problems. So by now you've probably seen Tableau Prep in action, and one of the things that Tableau Prep makes really easy is shaping your data. So your data has the wrong structure for the analysis that you're trying to do. Perhaps you need to union a bunch of files into a single table before you do your analysis. Or maybe you need to join to get the columns that you need together. Or you need to aggregate because your level of detail isn't right, or perhaps you have a series of columns that you need to pivot down to row data. But what I want to talk about is cleaning data. And cleaning data is different from reshaping data in a couple of ways. When you are reshaping your data, you're restructuring it, you typically know what the problem is, and you know when you're done. When you're cleaning data, you don't have that luxury. So when you're cleaning data, the process normally looks like this. You structure the data the way you want for your analysis, you eyeball it, and you pass it along on your data pipeline. And that data pipeline might be further steps in prep, it might be out to another person, another team, another organization. But eventually someone does some analysis, they create a visualization, and at which point someone eventually notices, hey, there's no data here for Philadelphia. Why is that? And the problem starts working its way back up the chain. The problem works its way back up the chain, and eventually you're staring at it going, why is Philadelphia not represented? And you look, and yes, somebody has misspelled Philadelphia. So you quickly check, you do it again, and you send it down. And 2 weeks later, you get an email explaining that someone is pretty sure that Chicago doesn't have all the data it's supposed to. So the problem is twofold. You need to identify that there's cleaning work to be done, and you need to know when you're done. You need to know when you have actually cleaned that column. Okay. All right, let's look at some specific examples. So here I have a year column. It's super great. I'm going to take this data, that's this table, and I'm going to aggregate on year. But someone has helpfully separated 1991A from 1991B, and they had a really good reason for doing that. But I just want my data aggregated by year, and now it's wrong. And once it's aggregated, if I'm further down the chain, it's not easy to recover the information I needed. I've got a state column. I've got a table with a state column in it, and now states are great because there are exactly 50 values in the US. That means that everyone is going to spell it correctly. Everybody is going to be consistent about capitalization and abbreviations. But someone put in an abbreviation for New York. And this is the kind of thing that you don't even notice because it's such a common abbreviation that your eye just reads that as New York. So these canonicalization problems are really common. And finally, I have a lat and a long column. Now, I love driving my dashboards with maps. So I've got a big wide table with the lat and the long column in it, and I think this will be fantastic. I'll just create my map. I'm already generating what I'm going to do in my head. All right, question to the audience. Is this a good idea or a bad idea? All right. So some of you may have noticed there's only 4 values, and one of those values is null. And that's part of the story, but remember, this doesn't show up so great here. So in the product, it's super obvious. I'm sorry. This is a histogram, and it doesn't show up on the slide very well, but actually, the number of nulls is radically larger than the number of other values by dozens or hundreds to 1. So the problem here is not that there are null values there, it's that these 2 columns consist almost entirely of null values. The data quality on these columns is too low to really sensibly use. Now, this is a symptom, right? Maybe what you need to do is head back in your data pipeline and find out why these values are null. But right now, what you know is you can't use these columns for anything. And you had to spend mental energy figuring out that even though these 2 columns exist, they're not useful for your purposes. Okay. All right. We're going to switch over to a live demo. And I want to be clear that I mean live, so there's no safety nets here, so be gentle with us. All right. So I have here a table with a column of links. And now for demo purposes, I've removed the other columns because they'll just be distracting. But the deal is I have a bunch of URLs, and I want to create a table, or I want to create a viz, where the user can select things and then navigate away from my viz. Maybe they're off to Wikipedia for further reading, or maybe they're to data.gov where I have citations for this. And there's 161 values. It tells me right there at the top, 161 values. But actually, are they all URLs? How would I convince myself that these actually are URLs? Remember, all we know is that they're strings. We know for sure that they're all strings, but we don't know that they're all URLs. So I'm a programmer, so I'm like, oh, well, no problem. I'll just write a little script, and I'll validate that column, toss that script away, and I'll move on with my life, right? And that'll work here, but then the next time I get data, I or somebody else has to do that same work again. I might just systematically work my way through 161 values, looking at each one. Sounds a little bit boring, to be honest, right? You could do it, you could do it. I'll tell you what I would do. I would just look, yeah, this one looks good. Yeah, it's fine, those are fine. And I'd send it on my way, right? But that leads to the problem that I talked about right at the very beginning, right? Somewhere down the line, somebody tells me, hey, this doesn't work, why doesn't this work? I get a broken link report. So fundamentally, the problem here is that all we've told Tableau Prep is that this is a string. But not every string is a URL, right? A vanishingly small number of strings are actually URLs. So what we need to do is be able to tell Tableau Prep that these are URLs, right? If we could tell Tableau Prep that these are URLs, then it would be a lot easier, because Tableau Prep could do a lot of work for us. Yes, so here's how we're gonna do that. We head up to the data icon that tells us that this is a string column, and we scroll down to this data role section, and we say, hey, Tableau, it's a URL. And right away, Tableau Prep has identified an error. Right away. It's immediately labeled these values. So let's look at all the values that aren't valid. There's 2 of them, right? So we went from 161 values that we needed to look at to 2 of them. Even someone as impatient as me can look at 2 values. Now, I don't know if you can see what's wrong with this one, but it has a space in it, right? URLs have a structural property that tells you that it can't have a space in it, right? There's a specification for URLs. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove that and replace it with a T, because this is clearly, the person's clearly intended to type http:// etc. Right? So I make that change right here, I hit enter, Tableau Prep looks at it, evaluates it, and says, great, that's no longer a problem for us. Now we have only 1 invalid value. Now I don't know if you can see what's wrong with the next one. It has only a single slash here where it should have 2, but I just want to exclude that value. So right here, looking at this invalid value, I tell it to exclude it. And just like that, Tableau Prep has excluded it. Did I fail to click? I told you, live. Oh, I said keep only. Oh, why would I do a thing like that? No problem. Easy to solve. See, just like that. Live demo, folks. So that was a test. I was testing whether you were paying attention. And you guys did great. So just like that, Tableau Prep now knows that there are no more invalid values, and I know that too. So I want to be clear about what's happened. We've identified the problem, and we've pushed on it until there were no more errors to clean. And now, if I get new data, they immediately pop up, right? Tableau Prep knows that this is intended to be a URL, and so immediately it can simply notify me when there's a problem. That's very powerful. So I mentioned before that URLs have a structural property, right? You can take a value and look at it and say, yes, this is a URL. No, this is not a URL. But what if I wanted to look at something like the title of every talk at TC18, right? If someone just gives you a string, you don't know if that's a title of a talk at TC, and certainly Tableau doesn't know. So those cases are a little bit different. Let's look at an example where there's lots of values, and it's often hard to tell whether something is or is not a city. So I have here a list of cities, at least I've been told they're cities, and I recognize some of these. These are probably all cities, right? So 161,000 values. Nobody is looking at all of those values. Nobody. And not only that, but I'm actually a monolingual English speaker. I only speak and read English, which leads me to problems when I want to validate some of these, because I literally am not competent to judge whether these are or are not cities. So what are we going to do? I'm a programmer, and so my first thought is, well, I'll go and get a list, a third-party list of all the cities in the world. I'll join with this table. I'll see what fell out, and then I'll analyze those. It still sounds incredibly tedious, but kind of doable, but pretty ugly. And again, you have to decide if you get something that falls out, is it the third-party list that's wrong, or is it this list that's wrong? It can be quite cumbersome. All right, you've probably guessed the next step, right? What we need to do is tell Tableau Prep. So let's do it. We simply go to the data column. We head down to this geographic subtype for the data role, and we tell it it's a city. And just like that, Tableau Prep has evaluated 161,000 values to determine whether these are or are not cities. Are there any problems? Are there any that are not valid? Pardon me. It's as easy as checking whether or not there are any invalid values here. And there are 2. Is anyone here from Albuquerque? Right. I ask that because only people from Albuquerque know how to spell Albuquerque. Right? If you've ever looked at data where people need to write Albuquerque, it's a mess. So, all right, so what's wrong with this one? It's missing the R, nice. 2 points. So we'll just edit it right here, and it's Albuquerque there. And just like that, Tableau Prep has evaluated these and guaranteed me that there are, in fact, only one value now that is incorrect, right? 161,000 values, sometimes it takes a second. All right, so any programmers in the audience that can tell me what's wrong with this guy? Notice that I'm not asking for native speakers of this language, but rather programmers, right? This diamond with the question mark in the middle, this is a character encoding problem, right? So I am, again, not competent to fix this. There may be some people that would know what the right thing to do is, but I'm just going to take this and exclude it. Notice that I select exclude this time. That's on purpose. And so Tableau Prep, after I'm telling it that I want to exclude that value, it then goes through my 161,000 values and tells me that none of them are wrong. Okay, I identified that there's a problem, and I fixed all of them. Right? As new data comes in, Tableau Prep will immediately tell me whether things are or are not valid cities. That's, again, did I say this before? It's kind of powerful. It's pretty amazing. Don't all applaud at once, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, now I switch back. That was the live demo. And I put these in the slides. This is really just the slide of the demo that I just gave, okay? So if you paid attention to the menus, you have a sense of what data roles that we are providing out of the box. This is the first version. You guys should definitely watch the space for new things to come, but let's go through just what we are providing out of the box right now. So email addresses, again, they have a structural property that tells you whether something is or is not an email address. URLs you saw in action, and then we have a number of geotypes that we support. Cities you saw, but also airport codes, states and provinces, zip codes, postal codes, and a number of other ones. Country, I think that's sometimes useful. Congressional district, so hot right now. But is that like enough? I don't want to undersell this, right? Like what we've done is provided a mechanism for identifying problems and making sure that all of them are fixed and alerting you when new problems come in. That is extremely powerful. I want to be clear about that. But as a developer on this team, I am constantly asking myself, and people are asking of me, whether we can make this easier, whether we can make it better. I kind of want us to be smarter about this whole thing, because for you guys, I don't want it to be hard, right? This is a process that needs to be easy. So Deepti's going to talk about how we're going to make it easy. I'll hand off the...
Thank you, Afton. All right, so was that easy, what Afton showed? I'll show you something easier. All right, why do we find data prep hard? Other than the fact that it's boring and very redundant and complete waste of time? All right, we sometimes find data prep hard because right by looking at the data, we don't know exactly what is wrong with the data. How about we scan a few hundred rows and we do know what is wrong with the data, but we still don't know how to go about fixing it yet? How about super smart data prep people you hear? You know how to go about fixing the data yet, but you are not familiar with the tool yet. You don't know the actions to take, or you don't know the best practices yet. That is where our shiny recommendation engine comes in. So while you're building your muscle around data prep tool, we in data prep team have been working heads down on building a recommendation engine that can look and analyze your data, profile your data, and come up with smarts that can recommend cleaning actions on top of your data. All right, let's try to understand this with an example. Who knows what this data is about? Anybody? How about now? If anybody was paying attention to the slide I just showed before this, you'll know. OK, let's see what Tableau Prep has to say. Tableau Prep says it's a zip code. It's saying most of the values in this column falls hugely in range of valid zip codes around the world. Similarly here. It's saying the column values in here fall in range of valid cities around the world. So now how did Tableau Prep know that? So while we were building our flow, extracting data, creating our joins, pivoting data, our recommendation engine was working in background, churning the data, profiling the data, and coming up with values and recommendations for us. Let's try to understand this better with an example. Everything is better understood with a demo. So let's switch to a demo and try to understand. Yes, I got it. All right. Here I've preloaded for you our super famous sample superstore. And I have created a demo node, which is completely clean, as you can see. All data in here is totally clean. Just kidding. No data is clean. All right. Let's see what do we have here. As Afton showed initially, the center, the heart of data prep tool is where you perform most of your cleaning and transformation action. Let's see what's new here. We have a very live column header. That means you can perform a lot of actions here. You can see the column name here, the number of discrete values listed in here, sorting order, et cetera. But I see something new in here. I see a bulb icon. That means Tableau Prep has an idea. Let's look at this. Tableau Prep is trying to tell me that there are a lot of leading and trailing spaces in here. And it's suggesting me, do you want to trim spaces in there? Of course I want to. Nobody wants customer names with spaces in it. Let's go ahead and apply it. And there. As easy as that, that action was applied, and my column is trimmed. So before I even get started thinking about how to clean my data, I go ahead looking at these ideas from Tableau Prep and see if those make sense for us. I see many more bulbs here. Let's see what it has to say about this column. Tableau Prep is saying most rows contain nulls for this field. Well, maybe all rows contain null for this field. Do you want to remove this? Of course. It's taking a lot of real estate on my profile pane. I go ahead, apply it, and there, it's gone. And there our famous postal code. I look at it. I have zip code. And it says most value match this data role, apply to identify invalid values. And it gives me a sample preview of valid values and invalid values. Do you want to apply it? I go ahead and apply it. Similarly, one after the other, I have a bunch of bulb icons. I look at it. I read it, what it's suggesting. I look at my valid-invalid profile. If it makes sense for me, I take in the recommendation, and an action is created for it. I just applied my action on zip code, but I see a bulb icon hanging in there still. Does Tableau Prep have more ideas for me? I go ahead and I look at it. It says you have some invalid values in there. Do you want to filter the selected values? Or do you want to group and replace it? Sometimes we don't know right away what to do for cleaning the data. Maybe I'll group it to null values, and I'll come and analyze and fix it later. So I'll go ahead, apply this suggestion. When Tableau Prep has multiple suggestions for you, it'll lay it out in tiles for you to look at them. Go ahead and apply it. And similarly, I can keep going on, looking at these bulb icons and applying my data. Before I even started putting my head on analyzing and profiling myself, I had a bunch of ideas which got me head started on this. Another thing I want to emphasize in this demo is that nothing I did here, or nothing Tableau Prep did here, was in a black box. All the actions are tied up to these recommendations. That means all the actions are listed here as an interactive audit trail. You can see here, the first action I took is trim spaces, and then I went ahead and removed a field. Say for some reason, I wanted to remove field first and then trim spaces. This is interactive. You can go ahead, drag and drop here, and as easy as that, that is what happens. You can go ahead and remove it. Say I didn't want to trim spaces. I like my customer names with spaces. I can go and remove this action. I can go and edit my actions. I come here, click on this. As easy as that, my extension pane opens up. I click on my null values, and here is the value that I had grouped and replaced to null. I can take what action I want here. Cool. That is about the recommendation engine. Let's go back to the slide. All right. So just to reiterate, in next few releases, look out for our bulb icons to pop up. Find out the recommendation bulb on top right corner of your profile pane. Look at the current set of recommendation, analyze if it makes sense for you, and apply it. I'll breeze through the next few slides where I've listed what I demoed right now for you to go ahead and try it. All right. Was that smart enough? Do you want more smart, or is that good enough? More smart. You are one demanding set of customers. All right. That's where custom data roles came in. OK. I hope all of you had a chance to attend Vision Keynote yesterday, where Zahira demoed custom data roles. Wasn't that exciting? That is what we are building right now. Our team is working to get this in your hand as fast as possible. But while we get there, your problems are still here. And while UI experience, ease of one click, and sharing across the org will need to wait just a little bit more, we are here to show you how you can get very similar results on your data cleaning needs with what we have already built in. How about something like this? Data roles for your needs. Look at this data. Maybe you have some fields that you can think of that would benefit with this kind of thing, patterning, right? There are patterns that exist in your data that you want Tableau Prep to know about, like this phone number. Maybe you only accept US phone numbers, and you need to validate before you enter whether they are valid phone numbers or not. There are some limited number of credit card numbers that you accept. You need to validate that. Say social security number, or employee IDs, or something like that. How about this, department? These are valid set of values that make sense only to your org, right? Say finance or development or one of those. Or maybe you don't want to use abbreviation like R&D, IT, et cetera. How about sales region, regions that are very specific and local to your city? Or how about bean types? Maybe you're very particular about the coffee bean types that you use. All right. Let's try to understand that with an example, too. Look at this customer ID. Can you see a pattern here? How do you ensure that this data is valid? By looking at this data, I can see that there are two letters, not alphabets. Afton keeps correcting me that they are letters, not alphabets. All right, there are 2 letters and a hyphen, and then there are 5 digits. Let's see how we can correct this. What we need to do is to create a pattern that matches those customer IDs so that you can put Prep to work on matching ones that don't. We are going to use regular expressions to do this. Now, regular expressions are a very deep topic, and I know a lot of you are gurus in it. And if you want to learn more, there is a lot of material out there. Just Google. We'll start with one simple example. Let's get back to the customer IDs. What do we see here? We need to match first 2 letters. First 2 letters, yeah. So they have to be valid, capitalized A to Z. There, I write one, I match the first one. But we need 2 of them. So I go ahead, I create another one. There are other ways to do that, I know, you smart people. All right, and then I need to match up a dash. That's easy. Just put a dash in there. And then I need to match up 5 digits. So 0 to 9. And I can go and write this 5 times, or I can just say repeat it 5 times. There you go. We have a pattern that matches my customer ID. Anything that doesn't fall in it is an invalid customer ID. Let's see through an example how Tableau Prep will do this. All right. Very conveniently, I have customer ID right in here, second column. OK. I go ahead, I click on this, quick cleaning context menu, and I go ahead, look for create calculated field. And what we just talked about, let's name this properly, even though this is demo, is valid customers. And let's look for a regex match. All right. Now, what we just created, A to Z and A to Z again. And then we have a hyphen. Then we have 0 to 9. And then we repeat it 5 times. All right, let's save this. Or not, because I left my customer ID outside. And there you go. Let's bring in the customer ID in. There you go. Now the calculation is valid. Let's save it. That creates a is valid customer column for me. I can see what is valid and what is not valid. Let's just try to see what is not valid for me here. I select false. I bring in the context menu. And I create a keep only filter. There. These are the customer IDs that are not matching the pattern I just said. What is wrong with this? Second letters are lowercase. That's easy. We have something very quick to fix that. We go and we make it uppercase. There. All of them are valid now. Let's remove our filter. Let's bring the calc down just to see. There. As easy as that, all the customer IDs are valid now. You want to keep this column hanging around for further validation, keep it, or feel free to remove it. All right. So that is how you create pattern-based matches, and you make sure your data always conforms to that. Let's switch back to slide just for a minute. All right. This is a very conveniently located switch for us. All right. I'll breeze through next few slides where I've put what I just showed you for you to try out and give us feedback. OK. So that worked for this set of data, right? Patterns matched. How about these? Right? These are valid set of values that need to match up to a list of valid values. How do I work with this? Let's go back to our demo. OK. Say, for one of my case study, I just need subcategories, which are stationaries. OK? So I go ahead, I select this, accessories, maybe binders. And copiers, and envelopes, and fasteners, there. And I create a keep-only filter on top of it. You see, Tableau Prep has created a calc for me, which is basically just an OR condition where it has to match up with a list of data. I go and copy it. And I close this. And I remove my filter. I create a calculated field. I paste this here. And is stationary. Save. There. I have a calculation which will validate what values are valid stationary for me and what are not. There. As easy as that, you can create your custom role with a list of values that match up. So while you wait for custom roles to come in and light up in the product so that you can easily share it across the org, publish it, this is one workaround to go through it. That's about it. Thank you. All right. I'll breeze through this. This again shows that is smart recommendation, data roles, and how you can write your own data roles using the product as it stands right now while you wait for custom data role. Thank you.
As promised, we have a question period if anyone has questions. Yeah, for sure.
So if you have, okay, so it looks like the zip code. So you're actually comparing it to a table of valid zip code rather than just 5-digit
Right.
numbers?
Right.
Okay, so it's not a valid zip code. Not a zip code.
That's right.
Okay, if you have 9-digit zip codes,
Yep.
dash,
Yep.
can you do a hybrid of the first 5 being the valid ones and then whatever the last 4 is you compare, or do you have to go to a custom?
I believe, so the question was, if you have 9-digit zip codes, can you set something up so that you only care about the first 5 and not the last ones? Is that right?
Well, and still allow the last 4 to exist.
Yeah, it's still the last 4 to exist. Yeah. So this may shock you, but I haven't looked at the list of zip codes that we support, but I don't believe we support 9-digit zip codes, but that's an easy thing to change. Yeah, yeah, gentleman there.
So some of the zip codes, what if you have a Excel file that turns off the 0 at the beginning?
The leading 0?
Yeah, does it automatically recognize that as a valid zip code then?
What
Or
are-
do you have to write some sort of a process to add the leading 0 back on before it can be validated?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, if you have data that's come in and it's been trimmed so that the leading 0 on a 5-digit zip code has been removed, do we recognize it as valid? I believe the answer is yes, we recognize it as valid right now. Yes, sure, at the back.
After you do some of the data preparation, you change some values, you update them, is there anything that can be done to keep that and reuse that at a later date? Because a lot of the times I have to recreate my data source, because something has changed,
Yeah.
right? Or maybe a brush, whatever. I would have to recreate all those rules and.
Yeah, you're talking about the ones that Deepti showed at the end where you're creating your own roles. Is that right?
Anything that has to do with the cleansing, anything that has to do with either updating values or.
Yeah. So until we have custom data roles, then I think the answer is yeah, you would need to recreate those or at least move them around your data prep pipeline. Once you have custom data roles, once we have them and we can share them with you, at that point, you'll be able to use that custom data role across all of your flows.
One easy way to share as a workaround might be that you can share your flows, and then you can edit connection and change your connections in there. The rules stick around, right? So you can bring in new connection and change the connection.
Yes.
For the things like cities, do you guys just have like a massive list of all the cities, or
We-
do you do some like geocoding and
We have a massive list of the cities. Yeah. And the problem with doing anything else is that you need some kind of connection to go out, and we want people to be able to do their validation even when they don't have a connection.
It's refreshed often, though.
Yeah. Yeah, at the back. Sorry, could you repeat the question?
if you're reusing the cleansing and you had that same set of data coming through again, Albuquerque,
Yep.
again, you're still gonna have to fix that. It's not gonna automatically put an R in.
So actually, the one that doesn't have an R, it will actually, it'll remap the value that doesn't have an R. But basically, when I edited that in place, I basically told Tableau Prep, when you see a string that has this value, change it to a string that has that value. So that particular spelling of Albuquerque will always be fixed. Different spellings of Albuquerque, however, will not be fixed, but they will be highlighted, right? They will be brought up for you to see.
So when you're
Sure.
saying it's always going to be fixed, like in that case of Albuquerque,
Yeah.
like when you're looking at that table at that column, or just anytime you ever see that?
So remember that DeepD was saying that when we perform these operations, right, they go into that changes list. So basically anything that goes through that step in the flow will receive that action, right? Does that answer the question? So if you open a totally new flow and bring in a totally new set of data, then those actions that you performed on one flow don't carry over to the new flow. Actually, before I want to follow up on that just to say, there are plans coming forward that will solve some of the problems that you're thinking about there. So watch this space. Yeah, sir.
Now, do you prep to kind of QA this data? Does it write back or workflow right back to its source? And you set it up to repeat something, Excel spreadsheet, table you have rights to, database?
Do you want to write back the data?
Yeah, you fixed it.
Yeah. So currently you can extract it to a text file or a hyperfile, but it's very high on our list to get right to database. Yeah.
Yeah, sir, in the corner.
The end state is that you start scheduling this routine down here, or the next state, right?
Sure.
So is there any way, is the plan that you're going to produce these alerts every time you schedule it to run? So that you can fix this, so that when somebody misspells Albuquerque and puts 3 Q's in it, you're told, and then you go fix the Q immediately? Or what's the plan for that?
Yeah, so alerting in general is something that we're working on separately, but it will solve the problem that you're describing. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not there. This is the V1. Yeah, at the back. So the question was whether or not they're on 10.5, and the question is whether they can use Tableau Prep. Tableau Prep is currently on 2018.3.1. And so will you be able to use it? This is sort of a question for your account manager. I don't have insight into how you can. It would be a licensing question, yeah.
Yeah. If you have a creator license, Tableau Prep comes free with
But
it.
if they have creator license on 10.5,
Yeah, not
it's not. So
10.5,
this
yeah.
is, again, I don't think we're the right people to ask. Yeah, but thank you. I think the gentleman in the white shirt had a question first, yeah.
I was wondering a little bit looking at the future, connecting to master data, especially with the last feature that you showed. Like if you had a list of valid reference values,
Mhm.
your thoughts or plans for how to look into master data sources.
Yeah, so basically with custom data roles, you should be able to get there. We can't talk much about it, but yeah, it's coming in.
It's both.
It's both.
It's both, yeah.
Yeah, it's both.
Yeah, so the plan would certainly allow you to update your master list or to take a master list and ingest it and consume it. But the specifics of that will come in our next release.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sir?
So slightly off topic, but Tableau server connecting to that.
So if you saw the vision keynote, there was some talk about Tableau Conductor. So if the published data source is on the server, then you could have a flow. So Tableau Conductor will allow you to run flows against data sources that are available on the server. Sir?
Do you do any smart analysis? Any smart analysis on lat long?
Probably not like you're thinking at this point. So many pipelines of thoughts. Yeah. No, there's no shortage of work to do, and we have a lot of really fantastic ideas. We just have to execute them.
We have a blog. We'll request like your feature that you need. Go request it there, and there is a voting button. Something that is voted up is what our team starts working on soonest.
Yeah, I mean, before we released the product, we knew scheduling was going to be super high on everyone's list. Yeah. Sorry, sir.
So when you're doing data cleaning, you're looking at the invalid value, and you pick exclude.
Mhm.
Does that just exclude it from your data checking? Is that what it is, or is it?
So no, you're filtering that row, or the rows that have that as the value.
So like from your result, like that row.
That row's gone. If you want to keep the row but don't want to deal with that value, we might map it to null. If you want to keep the value in place but you still want to know that it's not valid, then you don't do anything. It's just always marked, always marked as being invalid.
Any more questions?
You have a question.
Well, so what we've been using Prep more and more, and one of the places where we have issues is connecting to large data sources and doing work for a long period of time with lots of steps in there. Eventually starts to slow down, and well, I don't know. I don't know the reason. I imagine it's probably caching all these large pieces of information, because every time you click somewhere, you're showing row level data, and you're also aggregating it and doing this other stuff. That's the reason you can see the histograms of all the values and things like that.
Mhm.
It's not a problem always, but sometimes it is a problem, especially. Is that in the pipeline to try and?
First thing, I'll suggest you can do a perf profiling on it to see exactly where you're slowing down, right? You can see the profile of your performance on the flow.
Can you do performance?
Yeah, there is a performance recording.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
That said, there's a lot of work available to us for performance improvements.
Improvement.
And we're super aware of that. We're working on that for sure. The question was whether or not you can sample the data. Yeah, Deep, did you want to?
Yeah, that's what we use. We use data samples to do this analysis. So this is not the entire, much larger population behind it.
So this is an input node for a file, and there's a data sample tab, and you can tell the default sample amount is what we're using right now, but you can tell it to use all of the data, or you can specify a fixed set of values you want to use. So I was talking to somebody earlier who had very wide tables, and the profiling that we would do for the profile pane was slow when you have 300-400 columns. And so we suggested to her that she just limit, when she's doing her work, she can just limit this to 3 or 4 rows, perform all the steps that she needs, and then unblock that for when she wants to run the flow in total.
Is there a reason that Prep is separate from desktop? Because
Can't.
you can do pretty much everything in desktop, and it's really not elegant prose. And like Prep solves that, but why not just put it in the same?
Ultimately, that question is outside the scope of this talk, right? I will say that people already say that Tableau Desktop does too many different things, and adding this to that list may have just been a bridge too far, but I'm happy to talk more about that later if you want. Yeah. I think there was a question, yeah.
Yeah, so on Tableau regular desktop,
Yeah.
there's a setting where you can say, hey, don't update it every time I, right?
Yes.
If you're working with a huge data set, then it'll sit there and churn.
Yep.
Been any thought with Prep to do the same thing? So if I'm maybe opening an existing flow that someone built, I just want to look at one step. I don't have to wait for it to sit there and churn kind of through everything. Ready?
So it's a balancing act. And so what we want to do is make it so that the data is fresh and also that we're performant. And we don't consume gigabytes and gigabytes of space on your hard disk, on your file system. So in some cases, we're probably not optimal for your use case. So I don't know that that's an area of active work, but I think that's a great community forum point that you should bring up, or Deepti and I will take it back to our team.
For scheduling, is Conductor really the only way to schedule it, or is there some other way?
Currently, Conductor is the plan.
So Conductor is the plan. There is a command line interface, and you can set up your own cron or Windows task scheduler.
Yeah.
But Conductor is definitely the way that we would anticipate people doing it for the majority of cases. I actually don't have insight into the Tableau conductor licensing schema.
Yeah, on server, you'll have to upgrade the
A
license.
separate license, there you go. I believe them.
So conductor is a part of Tableau server.
Yeah, but I think it is a separate license.
Yeah, it's upgrade license.
Yeah, we're developers on the team. We're, oh, yeah, yeah. The question is whether you can publish the current data source. Do you mean the data source or the flow? Not the whole flow. Yeah, you can publish the output to the server. That's right.
In your, say, city filter role, can you, like, limit it to just US cities? Say, and so if you get Toronto, you want to get rid of all Canada.
As a Canadian, absolutely. That's the first thing you'd want to do. So right now we can't, but the idea of being able to modify these roles and convert them to custom roles is top of mind for sure.
Send the extract to a Microsoft SQL server, like a Tableau extract,
Yeah.
send it to a SQL server. Is there any plan for Tableau Prep?
So the ability to write directly to a database is, again, top of mind for us, but I don't think we can comment on timelines for when that will happen. Yeah.
The talk of Canada reminded me of that postal code issue. Like, can it handle international postal code? I mean, I guess Canada probably is most obvious one. But
Right, right. Yes, with caveats. Yeah. All right. If you have any further questions, please feel free to come up and chat with us.